You know, folks, there's nothing quite like the holidays to bring out the absolute worst in people. Picture this. It's Christmas Eve. Snow is falling outside, and you're sitting around the dinner table with your family, thinking this might actually be a peaceful evening for once. Then your father looks you dead in the eye and tells you to pack your bags and get out. Tonight, on Christmas Eve. That's exactly what happened to me and what I did next. Well, let's just say, it taught my family a lesson they'll never forget. My name is Sarah, and at 26, I thought I was doing the right thing by helping my family. I work for Mountain View Insurance here in Denver. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Or should I say, it paid their bills. See, 4 years ago, my dad Robert lost his job at the construction company. He was 52, had been there for 15 years, and when the company downsized, he was one of the first to go. Mom Linda had been working part-time at the local grocery store, but her 20 hours a week barely covered groceries, let alone rent. My younger brother Marcus was still in high school then, just 15, and someone had to keep the lights on. So I stepped up. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, gave up my apartment, and became the family's financial lifeline. Every month, like clockwork, I'd pay the rent on our little 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of Denver. I covered the electric bill, the water bill, the internet, the car insurance, the cell phone plan. You name it, I was paying for it. My parents' names were on the lease and the accounts, but my bank account was funding their entire existence. Dad would spend his days looking for work, which mostly meant sitting on the couch watching TV and complaining about how nobody wanted to hire a man his age. Mom would come home from her part-time job and immediately start listing everything that was wrong with the house, everything we needed to buy, everything that was my responsibility to fix. And me, I was working 45 hours a week, coming home exhausted, and then being treated like I was the problem. Sarah, the internet is slow again. Can't you call them and upgrade our plan? Sarah, Marcus needs new shoes for school. When are you going to take him shopping? Sarah, the water pressure in the shower is terrible. We need to call a plumber. Always Sarah, this Sarah that. Never thank you for keeping us from being homeless. Never, we appreciate everything you're doing. Just constant demands and complaints, like I was their personal ATM and customer service representative rolled into one. This past Christmas Eve started like any other holiday in our house. Tense, awkward, and full of unspoken resentment. Mom had made her famous pot roast, though I'd been the one to buy all the ingredients. Dad was in one of his moods, the kind where he'd been drinking beer since noon and looking for a fight. Marcus, now 19, and working part-time at a coffee shop while trying to figure out his future, was doing his best to stay invisible. Smart kid, he'd learned over the years that when Dad got like this, it was better to just keep your head down and wait for the storm to pass. We were halfway through dinner when Dad suddenly put down his fork and looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Pure contempt mixed with something that looked almost like hatred. You know what, Sarah, I'm tired of this. Tired of what, Dad? Tired of you acting like you own this house. Tired of you walking around here like you're better than us. Tired of your attitude. I stared at him, genuinely confused. What attitude? I haven't said anything. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That tone. That look on your face like you're doing us some kind of favor by living here. Mom jumped in like she always did when Dad started one of his rants. Robert, maybe we should talk about this later. No, Linda, I'm done talking. Sarah, you're 26 years old. You should have your own place by now. It's time for you to grow up and move out. The room went dead silent. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. Mom was staring at her plate, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Dad, I live here because I'm paying for everything. The rent, the utilities, the food we're eating right now. It's all coming out of my paycheck. That's your choice. Nobody asked you to do that. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Nobody asked me, Dad. You literally begged me to move back in when you lost your job. You said the family needed to stick together. Well, now I'm saying we don't. Pack your stuff and get out. Tonight. Robert, Mom finally spoke up, but her voice was weak, uncertain. "No, Linda, I've made up my mind. Sarah thinks she's so independent, so responsible. Let her go be independent somewhere else. I'm tired of her judging us, tired of her making us feel like we owe her something." I looked around that table, at my father red-faced and belligerent, at my mother who couldn't even look at me, at my brother who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, and something inside me just clicked. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, what? Okay, I'll leave. Tonight. But Dad, I want you to remember that this was your choice, not mine." I went to my room and started packing my hands, shaking with a mixture of hurt and rage. 4 years of sacrificing my independence, my social life, my own dreams to keep this family afloat. And this was how they repaid me. As I was folding clothes into my suitcase, Marcus appeared in my doorway. "Sarah, this is insane. You can't leave. What's going to happen to us?" "I don't know, Marcus, but apparently that's not my problem anymore. But the bills are Dad's responsibility now. He's the head of the household, right time for him to act like it." I called my coworker Jessica, who I'd become close friends with over the past year. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes away and had always said I was welcome to crash on her couch if I ever needed to. "Sarah, it's Christmas Eve. What's wrong?" "Long story, but I need a place to stay. Can I come over?" "Of course. Bring whatever you need. We'll figure out the details later." By 10 p.m., I was loading my car with everything I owned, which wasn't much after 4 years of putting every penny into my family's survival. As I carried my last box to the car, Dad appeared on the front porch. "Sarah, wait." I turned around, hoping maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he was going to apologize. "Don't think you can just come crawling back when you realize how hard it is out there. This is it. You made your choice." "No, Dad. You made my choice for me. But don't worry, I won't be crawling back." I drove away from that house, watching it disappear in my rearview mirror, and felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years' freedom. Christmas morning, I woke up on Jessica's couch and made myself a cup of coffee. Then I sat down with my laptop and did something I should have done years ago. I logged into every utility account, every service provider, every subscription that I'd been paying for. One by one, I removed my banking information and canceled my automatic payments. Electric company payment method removed. Water department payment method removed. Internet provider payment method removed. Car insurance policy transferred to my name only. Cell phone plan. My line transferred to a new individual account. It was methodical, almost therapeutic. Each canceled payment felt like taking back a piece of myself that I'd given away. The beauty of it was that most of these companies give you a grace period. The electricity wouldn't be shut off for 30 days. The water would stay on for a couple of weeks. The internet might last until the end of the billing cycle. But eventually those bills would come due. And when they did, Robert and Linda would have to figure out how to pay them. I also did something else that morning. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and had my paychecks redirected there. If my family was going to try to guilt me into coming back, I wanted to make sure they couldn't access my money, even if they somehow got hold of my account information. The first call came 3 days after Christmas. It was Mom, and she sounded panicked. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk." "What about, Mom?" "The electric company called. They said our payment didn't go through, and if we don't pay by Friday, they're going to shut off our power." "That's unfortunate. Have you talked to Dad about it?" "Sarah, you know we don't have that kind of money. The bill is $340. "Then I guess you better figure out how to get it." But you always pay the electric bill." "I used to pay the electric bill when I lived there, when I was part of the family. But Dad made it very clear that I'm not welcome anymore. So the electric bill isn't my responsibility." "Sarah, please. You can't just leave us without power." "Mom, I didn't leave you without power. You chose to kick out the person who was paying for your power. There's a difference." She started crying then, which might have worked on me 4 days ago. But something had changed in me. I'd spent 4 years being manipulated by tears and guilt trips, and I was done. Mom, I have to go. I'm at work. Sarah, wait. I hung up. The calls kept coming. Dad called that evening, his voice a mixture of anger and desperation. Sarah, what the hell do you think you're doing? I'm living my life, Dad. You know, like you told me to do. You can't just cut off all the utilities. That's cruel. What's cruel is kicking your daughter out on Christmas Eve after she's been supporting your family for 4 years. What's cruel is never once saying thank you for all the sacrifices I made. What's cruel is treating me like a burden when I was the only thing standing between you and homelessness. Sarah, be reasonable. We can work this out. No, Dad, we can't. You made your choice. Now live with it. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched from a distance as my family's carefully constructed house of cards began to collapse. The electricity was shut off first. Marcus called me whispering into his phone. Sarah, it's freezing in here. Dad's trying to use the fireplace, but we don't have any firewood, and Mom's afraid the house is going to burn down. Where are you calling from? I'm at work. My phone's the only one that still works since you transferred yours to a different plan. Marcus, you're 19. You don't have to stay there. But where would I go? Figure it out. You're an adult now. I felt bad for Marcus. He was the innocent victim in all of this. But I also knew that as long as he stayed there, he'd become their next target for financial exploitation. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is force them to stand on their own feet. The water was shut off next, then the internet. Within 3 weeks, my family was living in a cold, dark house with no running water and no way to communicate with the outside world except for Marcus's cell phone. Dad tried to get a job. I'll give him credit for that. But after 4 years of unemployment and a bad attitude, he wasn't exactly a desirable candidate. He managed to get hired at a warehouse, but he was fired after 2 weeks for showing up late and arguing with his supervisor. Mom picked up extra shifts at the grocery store, but even working full-time, she was only making about $1,200 a month. The rent alone was $1,800. By February, things had gotten really bad. I know this because Jessica's neighbors started telling her about the strange man who'd been seen lurking around our apartment complex, trying to look into windows. It was Dad. He'd somehow figured out where I was living and had been coming by trying to catch me alone. When that didn't work, he started leaving notes on my car. Sarah, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Your family needs you. Stop being selfish. You're destroying us. Is that what you want? The notes got increasingly desperate and angry. Finally, one morning, I found one that crossed the line. If you don't start helping us again, you're going to regret it. I know where you work. I know where you live. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. That's when I called the police. Officer Martinez was sympathetic but direct. Ms. Thompson, this sounds like harassment and possibly stalking. Do you want to file a report? Yes, and I want a restraining order. Can you prove he wrote these notes? I showed him my phone, where I'd been taking pictures of each note. I recognize his handwriting, and I have witnesses who've seen him around my apartment complex. The restraining order was granted within 48 hours. Dad was served with papers at the house, and according to Marcus, he went ballistic. He threw the papers across the room and started screaming about how you were trying to destroy the family. Marcus told me during one of our secret phone calls. Mom just sat there crying. Sarah, I don't think I can stay here much longer. Then don't. In March, I discovered that someone had tried to access my bank accounts. Multiple login attempts from an IP address that traced back to the public library near my parents' house. When I called the bank's fraud department, they told me that someone had also called, claiming to be me, trying to get information about my accounts and recent transactions. The caller knew some of your personal information, the representative told me. Your social security number, your mother's maiden name, your first pet's name. But they couldn't answer our security questions about recent account activity, so we didn't give them any information. I knew exactly who it was. Dad had access to all that personal information because he'd helped me set up my first bank account when I was 16. That same week, I came home from work to find my car missing from the apartment complex parking lot. I called the police, thinking it had been stolen, but when they ran the plates, they discovered something interesting. Ms. Thompson, your vehicle was impounded from a pawn shop on Colfax Avenue. Apparently, someone tried to sell it, claiming to be the owner. Someone tried to sell my car. The pawn shop owner got suspicious when the seller couldn't produce the title or registration. He called us, and we impounded the vehicle. The person who tried to sell it was a woman in her late 40s, blonde hair about 5'4". Mom. My own mother had stolen my car and tried to sell it. I pressed charges. The police arrested Mom at the grocery store where she worked. According to the report, she broke down completely when they put the handcuffs on her, sobbing about how she was just trying to help her family. She spent the night in jail before Dad managed to scrape together enough money for bail. But the damage was done. She lost her job, and now they had legal fees on top of everything else. That's when Dad violated the restraining order. He showed up at my office, somehow talked his way past security, and cornered me in the break room. Sarah, this has to stop. Your mother is facing criminal charges because of you. We're about to lose the house. Marcus is talking about moving out. You're destroying this family. Dad, you need to leave. Now. You're violating a court order by being here. I don't care about the court order. I care about my family. If you cared about your family, you wouldn't have kicked me out on Christmas Eve. If you cared about your family, you wouldn't have spent 4 years taking my money for granted. If you cared about your family, you wouldn't have tried to hack into my bank accounts or steal my car. We were desperate. You were desperate because you made a choice. You chose to bite the hand that was feeding you. Now you get to live with the consequences. Security arrived, then called by one of my coworkers who'd heard the shouting. Dad was arrested again, this time for violating the restraining order and trespassing. A week after Dad's arrest, Marcus called me. Sarah, I'm done. I can't live like this anymore. What do you mean? I mean, I'm leaving tonight. I've been saving money from my job, and I have enough for a security deposit on a small apartment. I also got accepted to Denver Community College for the fall semester. Marcus, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I wanted to ask, would you be willing to help me? Not financially, he added quickly. I know you've been through enough with this family, but maybe just advice, support. Of course, you're my brother and you're making a smart choice. What about Mom and Dad? What about them, Marcus? They're adults. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. You don't owe them your future just because they can't figure out their present. Marcus moved out that night. According to him, Mom cried and begged him to stay, but Dad was too proud to ask for help. Good riddance were apparently his exact words. I don't need either of you. Without Marcus's income from his part-time job, and with Mom unemployed due to her arrest, my parents couldn't make rent. They were evicted in May. I heard about it through the neighborhood gossip network. Jessica's friend lived on the same street and saw the sheriff's deputies putting their belongings on the curb. They loaded everything into an old pickup truck, she told Jessica. The woman was crying, and the man looked like he wanted to punch someone. They drove off and nobody's seen them since. I felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, no regret. Just a sense of closure, like a chapter of my life had finally ended. Marcus, meanwhile, was thriving. He'd gotten a small studio apartment near the community college and was working full-time at a restaurant while taking classes. We had dinner together once a week, and for the first time in years, our conversations weren't dominated by family drama. Do you ever wonder what happened to them? He asked me one evening over pizza. Sometimes, but not in the way you might think. I don't wonder because I miss them or feel guilty. I wonder because it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You can't help but look. I heard from a friend that they're living in a one-bedroom apartment in Aurora. Dad's working at a gas station, and Mom's cleaning houses under the table since she can't get hired anywhere with her criminal record. How do you feel about that? Marcus thought for a moment. I feel like they're finally experiencing the consequences of their choices. For the first time in their lives, they can't blame someone else or expect someone else to fix their problems. It's been 8 months since that Christmas Eve dinner, and my life is completely different. I have my own apartment now, a nice one-bedroom place with a view of the mountains. I got a promotion at work, partly because I'm no longer constantly stressed about my family's financial crisis. I've started dating again, something I couldn't do when I was living at home, and supporting 3 other people. I've taken up hiking, joined a book club, and even started taking evening classes in business management. Jessica and I have become best friends, and she's been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. You know what I admire most about you, she told me recently. You didn't just escape a bad situation, you completely rebuilt your life. And she's right, I did rebuild my life, but more importantly, I rebuilt myself. For 4 years, I'd been so focused on being the good daughter, the responsible one, the family savior, that I'd forgotten who I was underneath all those roles. I'd been Sarah the provider, Sarah the problem solver, Sarah the scapegoat, but I'd stopped being just Sarah. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I feel bad about abandoning my family in their time of need. Here's what I tell them. I didn't abandon my family. My family abandoned me first. For 4 years, I gave everything I had to keep them afloat. I sacrificed my independence, my social life, my own dreams and goals. I worked myself to exhaustion to pay their bills, and in return, I got criticism, demands, and ultimately, rejection. When Dad kicked me out on Christmas Eve, he wasn't just telling me to leave the house. He was telling me that my contributions didn't matter, that my sacrifices were meaningless, that I was disposable. So I became disposable. I disposed of the financial burden of supporting ungrateful people. I disposed of the emotional burden of trying to fix people who didn't want to be fixed. I disposed of the guilt and obligation that had been weighing me down for years. And you know what I found underneath all that burden? I found myself. I found a woman who was capable, independent, and worthy of respect. I found someone who deserved better than being treated like a walking ATM. Last month, I got a letter, not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter in my mailbox. The return address was from Aurora, and I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Sarah, it began. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. She went on to explain how hard things had been since Marcus and I left, how Dad had become increasingly bitter and angry, blaming everyone but himself for their situation, how she'd finally realized that they'd been taking advantage of me for years. I see now that we treated you terribly, she wrote. We took your generosity for granted and made you feel like nothing you did was ever enough. When your father kicked you out that night, I should have stood up for you. I should have told him he was wrong. But I was scared, and I was weak, and I let him hurt you. The letter went on for 3 pages. She talked about how proud she was of Marcus for going to college, how she'd heard through mutual acquaintances that I was doing well, how she hoped someday I might be willing to forgive her. I'm not asking you to help us, she concluded. I'm not asking you to come back or to send money or to fix our problems. I'm just asking you to know that I'm sorry and that I love you and that I understand why you had to leave. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and went on with my day. A week later, Marcus and I were having our usual dinner, and I told him about the letter. Are you going to respond? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks it's too little too late. What does your gut tell you? I thought about it. My gut tells me that Mom's apology is probably genuine. But it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't undo 4 years of being taken for granted, or that Christmas Eve, or the fact that she stole my car. So what are you going to do? Nothing. At least not right now. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have a conversation with her. But right now, I'm still building my new life, and I don't want to complicate it with old drama. Marcus nodded. I get that. I think about reaching out to them sometimes too. But then I remember how much happier I am now, how much less stressed I am. And I realize that some bridges are meant to stay burned. Do you think that makes us bad people? No, I think it makes us people who learn to value ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. As I write this, it's almost Christmas again. A year since that fateful dinner that changed everything. I'm sitting in my own apartment, looking at my own Christmas tree, planning my own celebration with people who actually want me around. Tomorrow, Marcus and I are having Christmas dinner together. Just the two of us, no drama, no walking on eggshells, no wondering when the next crisis will hit. We're going to cook together, exchange gifts, and enjoy each other's company without any ulterior motives or hidden agendas. It's going to be the best Christmas I've had in years. People sometimes ask me if I miss my parents. The honest answer is that I miss the parents I thought I had, not the parents I actually had. I miss the idea of a loving, supportive family, but I don't miss the reality of being used, manipulated, and ultimately discarded. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, support, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Marcus and I have that. Jessica and I have that. My coworkers and friends have that. My parents, they had an ATM with legs. And when that ATM stopped dispensing cash, they threw it away. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this. You don't owe anyone your financial security, your mental health, or your happiness just because you share DNA with them. For too long, I believed that being a good daughter meant sacrificing myself for my parents' comfort. I believed that family loyalty meant accepting whatever treatment they dished out, no matter how unfair or hurtful. I was wrong. Real family, the kind worth having, doesn't ask you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Real family celebrates your success instead of resenting it. Real family says, "Thank you," instead of, "What else can you do for us?" My parents taught me a valuable lesson, though probably not the one they intended. They taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was. They taught me that I can survive on my own. They taught me that my worth isn't determined by how useful I am to other people. Most importantly, they taught me that sometimes the best thing you can do for toxic people is to remove yourself from their lives completely. Not out of spite or revenge, but out of self-preservation and self-respect. I cut off every bill and watched their life fall apart. But in doing so, I watched my own life come together in ways I never thought possible. And that, I think, is the real victory.